apart from prostitution, drugs, and maybe politics if you're in the African context or the Kenyan context, agriculture is another thing that can give you over 100% ROI. For the small-scale farmer to graduate from half an acre, an eighth, a quarter, to graduate to 10, 30, 40, 50 acres, they have to amalgamate. Otherwise, they will never graduate. It's just ukweli wa mambo. I think you should get into farming because for the guys, when you post that you're going around to the farms, the babes like people who go around out to the farms. Wanakuambia manze twende road trip. Me sitting back, and maybe I have a right to say this, a right because I'm Kenyan, because I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about Uganda, Tanzania. I'm talking about here. I'm Kenyan and I'm also in agri. Mkulima mdogo, show us a success story where this farmer has gone from half an acre to a quarter an acre to 10, 20. What's a success story? Are you raising money to say that you're helping them, but you're helping them in perpetuity? That hawatawai kwa hizo macratches.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. This is your home of organic conversations. I'm your host, the Organic Guy, and around here we have conversation around how we can make our food system really work for us rather than against us. Today I have a very special guest with us. It goes by the name of Kevin Kamau. He's been doing this for a while now, so he has a lot of wisdom around how we can help elevate our agriculture, if you will. So he's the founder of Tukalime. Kevin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. Thanks for making time for the pod. I was just wondering, we're in the rainy season, so is this usually your peak time?
This is my peak time. Actually, I was telling somebody yesterday, when you see it's raining, that's when I'm broke. Because it's basically all hands on deck. That's when we are planting, that's when we're organizing everything. You know, farming is a set of protocols, right? That you have to follow to be able to get your objective. And part of the protocols is land prep, which we did in March. Then once you plant, then it will rain. Then the weeds start coming out, so you probably have to spray for weeds. Then after that, you have to take care. You hear somebody's goats have come in and cows because they are seeing the juicy shoots coming out. So it's usually the tough time. But I can say right now we are mid-season. We are almost getting to cruising altitude. Right now you're like, I have done my bit. This kid is about to go to university and graduate.
Nice. Is if you had to estimate, is majority of the farm that you're managing, are they under rain-fed or?
No, majority rain-fed. I mean, for us right now, cumulatively, we've done about 4,000 acres. This season, we had to plant about 1,200 acres. To put irrigation on 1,200 acres, and I keep telling guys, unless you're dynasty, because you're looking at, to put irrigation, even without the boreholes, a borehole is about 2 to 3 million. To irrigate, let's say you're using drip irrigation, you're talking about 200,000 shillings per acre. So if you multiply that, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
I usually tell guys, if you have a lot of money and you don't know what to do with it, just start a farm.
Yeah. And then also, you see, you don't have to irrigate. Well, irrigate is good because you take care of the variables, or basically one of the most important variables, which is water, which is the biggest thing if you need for farming, pretty much. But then, we found a sweet spot in Narok. And the reason of Narok, and I usually call it Texas, because Narok is big. And you have different ecological zones. So you have Mount Narok, which is near Njoro. That's high altitude. You can do your carrots, cabbages, potatoes. We are also close to the Mara, which is a bit drier. But there we grow semi-arid crops that are more resistant to drought. So we found a sweet spot. So it's not every shamba that is just a shamba to grow things. You gotta have to at least, I keep telling guys, jisaidie ndio uweze kutoboa. You get?
Yeah, that's a good perspective. So before we dive into the conversation, I like to go back to your early childhood, because I'm a huge believer in terms of how you grew up and where you grew up plays a critical part on who you become later in life. So take us back to your early childhood. Where did you grow up? How was the environment like in terms of personality? Who are you? So help us paint that picture for us.
So born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. Shags is Nairobi. I know people always look at me, especially when I go to talk to Wazes and they ask you where are you from, and you say Nairobi. They look at you like, but no, where are you really from? But my dad was born in Nairobi. My mom was born in Nairobi. That's the shags I know. The shosho we used to go visit is Nairobi. So we're talking about Dagoretti and Kino. So actually spent, 18 years in Dagoretti, a place called Waithaka, a stone throw away from my grandmother. I want to say it looked like a punishment back then, but I remember going to the shamba with my dad, because, he's trying to instill those traditional values. The shamba, basically, we walk to the shamba, which is in Dagoretti. We have a shamba there, a family shamba. But it never really stuck, to be honest. I'm the last born of 3 siblings. My dad and my mom, unfortunately, have left us. I lost my dad when I was in Form 4 and my mom when I was about 24. But then, when I look at it in a weird way, it wasn't, as much as it's sad, I felt like they had already done their bit in terms of giving the tools to be able to prosper. And by the tools, I mean the do's and don'ts, the kawaida respect, your please and thank yous, the ability to be able to network by exposing you to things like I started going to clubs when I was young. I remember I was a part of Hodari Boys Club. I went to St. Mary's for primary school. My mom was a trader. She used to buy clothes to come sell. They'd go to Turkey, Hong Kong, and stuff. Used to have a stall in Westlands Market. So she would take me. I think the first time I left the country, I was about 14 or younger, 10 to 14. And I remember there was the exposure part, but pia hata ilikuwa biashara ndio niweze kumbebea extra baggage. Unajua vile wanakupatia capacity ya kubeba. But with all that, when I look a bit at it now as an adult, it all ends up here. That you're able to be able to sit in rooms and have discussions of a bigger, more complex nature, just because of the exposure that that befell me. Yeah. So went to school here in Nairobi, went to Kampala for A-levels, and then went to the US for 10 years. Then came back when I was 30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, you skipped a very important part. You went to the US and then you came back. I mean, most people's dreams, especially from Kenya, is to go to the US and sort of make life there. So what prompted you to make that leap? Say, you know what, I want to go back.
I mean, I think the thing is, I knew that, and maybe I'm talking from a point of privilege, but I know that, or I knew even back then that the US is not the alpha and omega, right? By the time I had left, I believe, by the time I had left is when Kibaki was coming into power, I believe, yeah. Actually, he was president because he was president at 2 or 3, 2013. So I left in 2005, December. And I came back 2015 when we were talking about now the next transition. And the thing about, and why it's so specific or significant about the Kibaki era is because there's a lot of opening up. So when we were there in the States, I used to come back as a Samabani, you can see the leaps and changes that's happening in Kenya. And I remember talking to friends and family friends who are entrepreneurs, and them telling me, look at what's happening. Look at all the things. It's also almost like a resurgence or a second coming of Kenya, right? And I knew the US gives you the comfort of, okay, Gonjeka, you'll go to hospital. There are safety nets, right? But unless you just want to be a footnote in history where you just like you lived, that's it. But as much as we are all unique human beings, just like a fingerprint, you must want something more or for yourself. So for me, I remember just sitting down, and I remember I had just turned 30, and it just clicked, and I was just like, I need to go back home and do more. I didn't know what the more was. So it wasn't farming, it wasn't agriculture. It wasn't, I don't want to tell you that was a thing. So yeah, I knew I had to come back, and I came back, and agriculture was just something I stumbled onto.
Oh, okay. So when you say stumbled, you just mentioned it wasn't something that you thought about, you're in the US, you're like, you know what, I want to go back and sort of start farming?
No, no. You come back with the idea of, I want to, I think the other thing about human beings, and when you're away and you're coming back, you think like you're better. You think that you will get a job just like that because you spend time abroad. There's a certain air that you work with, but you get the realization happens very quick. Actually, my brother is still abroad, and he keeps saying, "Why did you guys come back and stuff?" And we keep telling him, "Those gone are the days that uko maju was the thing. This is where we need to be." So you realize that there's so much growth that you can do. So stumbling upon means that I shopped my CV around to those uncles who said, "Kuja nileta CV, tutakupatia kazi." Didn't work out. And then I remember I was living with my sister then, and the question was, what am I going to do? Ukikaa nyumbani a few months, 2-3 months, it's okay. You're still adjusting. You're having fun with your friends. You're catching up. But if you have a self-internal drive, you're like, what can I do? And we had a shamba in Kinangop. And there's a guy that I had met who had also just lost his job. And we decided to just go farm and be able to at least keep busy. That's why it started.
So this is an interesting question I have. What do you think is one thing the US taught you that Kenya would have never taught you?
That the US taught me process in terms of things are supposed to follow a certain path to be able to get to X. You see, in Kenya, which is a good thing and a bad thing, is there's always a guy for something. If I want a certificate of good conduct, I'll call an OCS somewhere, you'll find a way. But in the US, you're taught the patience of like, you just go apply. If it doesn't come out, let's say it's a passport or whatever it is, there's a 1-800 number to call. There's a number for reference. And somebody for sure will call you back and follow up. Why haven't you gotten your X document? So it teaches you that shortcuts are not the best thing, because it comes back to bite your butt, whether you like it or not.
And from a Kenyan perspective, what's one thing do you think Kenya taught you that the US would have never taught you?
Hustle, man. Hustle. If Kenya, let me tell you, if you just one day go and sit somewhere in Tao and just look at the movement. People are moving with purpose because everybody is hustling. In Kenya, even the guys who are employed are hustling. You're paying payee, but you're still hustling. You're still selling some kiondos somewhere. You're still doing ABCD. These are the entrepreneurship or the entrepreneurial bug in Kenya is so alive and ripe that you staying at home and saying that andrusheng your mikono juu na kusema hakuna job, which yes, the times are tough, but you have to hustle whatever it is. That's why for me, even today, when I look at CVs and people have gone to JQAT and all these things, and let's say we are looking for a position to fill, that's good, well and good. But I'm more like, what have you done lately? Who are you as a person? How do you problem solve when the problem is not textbook? Because that shows that you're thinking outside the box, and Kenyans, we are gifted with that, by the way. So nowadays, even when I sit in meetings and I'm chairing them, I have been able to train my guys to be able to give a solution to the problem at hand. It's usually like, kuna ngombe ziliingia, zimeanza kukula. I'm like, oh yeah, lakini tumeongea na chief ameambia yule jamaa, because we lease a lot of shambas, ameongea na yule jamaa, they are fencing, and remember the seeds we bought a little bit extra to be able to gap, because we knew that there will be an issue, maybe some will just die, won't germinate. So I'm like, that's well thought out. Then you realize that your job is very easy.
Yeah, it's a very good perspective to have, especially, I've also had the privilege of like going outside the country and living in Europe for a while. It is true in terms of everything is very systematic. Like if it's traffic, you have to wait until it turns green, right? You go to the supermarkets, you can just self-serve yourself. So you can't even have the incentive to steal. So there's that, I think, is it ingrained since they are small? I think so, because it's, that systematic ability of doing things in a certain way is sort of second nature to them. So I think that's something that they have on upper hand.
Yeah, and the thing is, the good thing about the systems is that it equalizes society, you know? Knowing that if I'm applying for a birth certificate, if I'm applying for whatever, whether I live in Runda or I live in Umo, we are still logging into the same system. It equalizes. And we are both going to have the same wait time or the same opportunity to get your ID, your passport, whatever it may be. The problem with when a system is dysfunctional, then you have those who have connections or have money tend to have an upper hand, you know? You see, like, let's say, for example, if you're applying for a job and they tell you, like what we were saying, a certificate of good conduct, right? And there's a delay. Not everybody has access to call an uncle, an aunt, or a pal from wherever. Tafadhali, can I get this thing next week? Now imagine that guy who has graduated uni, his job is saying, get me this certificate, and you're being told the system is down. And ameambiwa, we are hiring you, but you need to get this thing. We can't. Nini. So the guy has to wait for 2-3 weeks, a month, whatever it is, to be able to get.
We have a long way to go from that perspective. So take me through the story behind Tukalime. So you come, you've leased a shamba somewhere in Kinangop. You start farming. Then what happens? What is the idea behind Tukalime?
So when we started farming in Kinangop, again, it's a means to an end at this point. Trying to figure out, you still don't know how big it could be or how, I was not sure. You're still applying for jobs, trying to figure out how is this thing all going to work out. Then, because you're posting on social media and stuff, my friends in the diaspora started seeing what we're doing. And the biggest question here was, we are also away, our parents are here. And our parents, being the baby boomers, and were the ones who actually are custodians of the wealth right now. Our parents, for me, my parents would have been 70s pretty much. But when you work backwards, they're the guys who in the 70s and 80s made money to buy land and stuff like that. That's so 70s and 80s, meaning right after independence when things were opening up and you could get a job, stuff like that. So custodians of the land and everything. And they're getting older. And my friends were like, we need a way where we can send money back home, but in a dignified way. So we want to be able to invest in the shambas that mom and dad are farming, and it gives them some sort of income. Because, your mom and dad, even sending the money, they still are, they're still their kid. So even them, they feel some kind of way asking for chums. But then also, these guys realize that their parents are farming not with a clear path. They don't even know if it's profitable. Ni kuweka mahindi ama maharagwe na kuvuna. Lakini if you ask if they made money, they don't know. So my friends were like, could you expand your business or your systems? Please go take a look at my folks' shamba. Give us an idea what we can do. I'll pay you a little bit extra if you can just rusha macho. And that's what the idea of Tukalime came. And it was basically formed to be able to manage idle assets for the middle class or the people in the cities who have idle assets shags, and they have a little bit of disposable income, so they can buy the fertilizer and stuff, but they necessarily do not have the know-how to farm or have access to markets. So now, remember going back, like I was saying, in terms of the exposure, my parents knowingly or unknowingly exposed me to, I was able to have conversations or meet people who I could market produce to. The problem now was the produce, right? So when the idea was born in December 2015, Employee 001, I just worked, because I knew the one thing I didn't have was, I'm not an agronomist. I studied economics and finance. I did not do agronomy. So I went to Nairobi University Kabete campus, and my thing was to walk through the hallways to look for the dean of agri, to be like, okay, the guys who graduated last year, who do you feel is a good guy that I can get on board? And that's how I got Employee 001. Actually, I met him in the corridors as I was asking for directions, the dean's office. It was just a cold call. And then he was like, why are you looking for the dean? And I was like, yeah, I'm starting this company and I need some help. I need some agricultural students. And he's like, I just graduated. Actually, he had come to, what's that thing when you finish Shule and you're looking to that release form. He had come to Malizana with that stuff. And that became Employee 001. So we went to Kinangop because remember, I'm starting this business, but again, the imposter complex is big because, of course, you haven't done your 10,000 hours. So you don't know nothing. So we took an acre and divided it into 8s. And these 8s, I grew carrots, I grew potatoes, I grew beetroots, I grew courgettes. There's different things because also, not to even sell, just to see what's a process. And that's how we started.
Yeah, that's a very bold move from you. I mean, just walking out into a university and then hoping for the best. That's an entrepreneurial spirit, if you ask me, because that's a bold move. So for someone who doesn't know, take us through like the innings of how Tukalime works. So someone has a bare shamba somewhere, they don't know what to do, and then you're just walking and you guide them on how to do it.
So now the story becomes it changes. So this is 2015. So 2016 we start. My sis actually gives me her shamba I'm talking about 1 acre, 1 acres, not big shambas, in Nyanyuki as client. I think she was the first client actually, client number 1. Then another friend of mine also had an adjacent shamba in Nyanyuki. And again, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking from a point of privilege because not everybody has friends who have such access. Yeah? And then we start, and the first project is Chomeka Vibaya Sana. These things burn, nobody gets their money back. But I keep telling guys, in entrepreneurship, even when I see and hear on Twitter, sijui biashara fulani imeanguka ama whatever, as long as these guys were not thugging people, were not stealing, but inherently they were out to do good, but just the fundamentals broke down. By the way, pray for them because entrepreneurship is very hard. And my sister and the guy who had given me that shamba, they were very gracious because they saw there's a capacity issue, but he'll get there, So once failed, but we continued. And and you see, these are at least our close friends. When you're accepting shambas from other people to farm for them and they're giving you money, the anxiety, auto ulali, ni kama deni. And when things go wrong at the shamba, they look at you like, why did this thing go right? Because you're telling them you're an expert. You've hired the agronomists, you've done everything whatsoever. But then, back to your question, how it was working then was you call us, you tell us you want to farm, you have X acres. And we capped it, not capped it, rather the floor was 3 acres and above. Because we felt from 3 acres, the economies of scale can kick in and you'd be able to get, it will make commercial sense and be able to pay us. Anything below, let's say if I told somebody I can pay me to do half an acre, you won't make enough profit to also pay me. Like it won't make sense. Now I'll just be lying to you, So 3 acres and above. So you'd pay us. We come and we geotag. So we measure your farm because a lot of people will tell you they have 3 acres. Ukipima, ukitoa kaburi ya kukaa, utoe sijui nini, unakuta shamba ni 2.5 ama 1.7, whatever. We do that. We do a soil analysis. And then we look also at the factors of production in your area. So if it's Kinangop, we're like, it's high altitude, kunakuanga na baridi, there's frost sometimes in June, July, it's coming up. It rains X millimeters, the soil is a bit acidic. So we put all that stuff and we put it into, we developed like not a program, I won't say a program, it's basically an Excel thing that we were working on, and say, to be able to produce 1 kg of potatoes in this area, based on these factors of production, your even your labor, ngata, kila kitu, petroli, kila kitu, am I going to be able to be competitive in the market? Because that's what a lot of people are not doing, right? And then now we present it to you, I tell you, Brian, look, hii shamba yako, kwanza lazima ufence, sababu nimeona neighbor wako wako na mbuzi mingi. You have to do that. You have to add manure because the soil analysis would say it doesn't have enough organic matter or what have you. Fertilizers like this, the seeds are like this, ABCD. After all this stuff, you'll be able to produce a kilo of potatoes at 17 bob, let's say. The market is at 30 bob, so we know we have margin. However, we have to put a success rate and say, let's even shave off 20% and say, in a good scenario, 80% uweze kutoboa. You'll be profitable. Then for you, as the investor of your land, remember asking the contractors, ni kusema, tuendelee. And that's how Tukalime was working then. Yeah. But then it had to pivot. Yes. Now, after COVID, or rather COVID hit us. Actually, no. Let me rewind a little bit. We grew. Still having some losses here, some successes here, but still not anything as a business. It's still, because we registered it as a business in 2017. So those 2 years, ilikuwa my M-Pesa nini was my bank account, was everything. You have to start from there. So 2017 we registered it, and we continued just prodding and trying. But at this time also, I'm also hiring agronomists as we continue. But at this point, I'm also getting in my, let me call it my flight miles, or my 10,000 hours. You know the way a pilot has to get those hours? I'm also getting my, so you're becoming more confident in what you're saying, in what you're doing. And the success rate is also going up, a bit up. Yeah. Then in 2019, we got our first investment into the company. And this came off networking too. Somebody just told me, somebody who we had been having drinks with for the longest time, and was just like, Ebu, tell me about your business again. I explained to them that we manage farms for people with idle land. And from that conversation, I got an investment of 10 million shillings. Because it was a business that was investing in us. So they are a family that own an animal health company. So even if they're telling you, please send us your book so we angalia. Manze vitabu zako ziko kwa Excel, ingine hata hai make sense. But the most important thing about that, or what I learned from that, is as long as people see like you're trying and you're steadfast. Yani it's not wishy-washy. You're not at labda, kutaenda, kutakua. You know, you're very passionate about what you're doing. They're willing, because they're not investing into the business. They're investing into me. You get? We're not family members. We're not whatever. It's here. And we'll give you these chums, and we'll make it into a situation where we'll give you a credit line of 10 million plus an office plus whatever for you to build what you have. And then COVID hit in 2020. So that line of credit is what kept us alive during COVID, because all the biashara or all the credibility we had built went to zero.
So what was the pivot that was necessary after COVID hit?
So you see, again, when we were getting our flight miles in, two things were apparent. Even when COVID had hit and we were all, sijui watu wengine walikuwa wameanza kushona nguo, wengine, you know, all those two hobbies are things people were doing. People were still eating, right? Albeit they were doing it at home. Not hotels and stuff were closed, schools were closed, which also shocked the market because prices tanked. Because the way you eat at home is not the same way you eat outside. It's very different. So we knew people were still going to eat. So, and we knew that market is not the issue because people are still buying stuff. That's number one. The second thing we realized is, as much as our clients dwindled to zero, no money coming in, land does not disappear. It's still there. So we have two things, which are the factors of production, or the recipe to what is Tukalime, is we have the land, which we can grow, and we have the market. So hapa katikati we realized, also Brian may not be a farmer. He's a landowner. So take Brian as an individual out of the picture, but I need his land. Remember, we're not dynasty, so I don't have shamba yati, sijui inakaje. But when I remove Brian from the picture, I can have a conversation with Brian and be like, look, you're not a farmer, but I'll lease your land. And we'll discuss how much. Remember, on this side, as we were getting our flight miles in, we had built a program or a way to be able to calculate the cost of production by inputting all these things. So once I put, let's say I'm leasing land at 10,000 shillings an acre per year, which is actually the going rate on average. If I put it in there, then I realize with if the land was mine, the cost of production, I'll just use potatoes for reference sake, is 13 bob a kilo. If I add 10,000 shillings, which I can do 2 seasons to grow arroz per year, my cost of production will only go to 13 bob and 10 cents. So now I went around, and because market is not a problem, I need to get contracts. These contracts, my assumption was with these contracts, I'll be able to get financing. See, because I can go to the bank and say, Ebu angalia, tumefanya ABCD. We have all these guys who are willing to buy from us. We need investment. So we started going around, and we signed. Some of these things sound like it's not real, but I'm telling you, I have lived such a cynic life, and I keep telling my guys, God, by the way, is over here, just guardian angel, just pushing. Believe it or not, we signed contracts worth $700,000.
Whoa. That's what, 70 million?
Yeah. Unaenda tu unasema, because now, and this is how it worked. And then I'll tell you why that also did not work, but we signed the contracts. I go to, let's say, I don't use brand names. I'll go to like a supermarket or a restaurant, and I'll be like, I can produce this for you. Can you be able to give me your current, past, present, and future consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables? Guys are very willing because it's not proprietary information. Like here, they'll give you an Excel. So you choose your top 5 things. You say, okay, potatoes are number 1, tomatoes, onions, carrot, whatever it is. And you see how much they're spending. And not necessarily, they don't give you the price, but they'll give you the consumption. So you tell them, your issues are here. During the month of May, June, which you're going to start seeing prices going up, you have spikes. I can be able to produce for you X commodity all year round at the right price, the right quality, consistency, and quantity. Somebody's just like, sour, let's sign up. So that's how we got the markets. And we went ahead and signed all these contracts and stuff. That's how umekaa chini uko na contract. You talk to these financiers, and they're just like, no. And one of the things that they were refusing to finance us was, you're not profitable. You don't have a track record. You're not profitable. Why would you give you money? And also COVID for 2 years. How am I giving you money? I was like, damn. And some of those contracts that we signed, because also you're networking, it inakumiza because if I meet you and you're in a position of leadership and you say, because you'll go tell your other leadership colleagues and Sema, I have a guy. He can do A, B, C, D. And then you don't deliver. That person looks bad, So, but then not all of the contracts failed. Some worked out pretty well. And those are the ones that have made us go from 3 acres in 2015, 2016 to now 4,000 acres in 2025.
So 4,000 is an accumulation of all a number of farms you're managing.
Yeah. And what we decided was we're not keep it very simple. COVID, if anybody didn't learn anything from COVID, shida kwake. COVID taught you that what you think, you think you wake up in the morning and put one leg into your trouser or shorts and the other leg into your trouser and shorts, and you think it's automatic. It's not automatic. Health is a factor. Global issues, you're seeing the way the US is going through turmoil in terms of the global trade things that they are doing. So we realized this. Number one, the first thing I did, I don't need an office closer, because now you have to close the taps where you're bleeding. Don't everybody pay people their dues, rehire them on contractual basis, because you don't want imambo. If projects reduce, na si staff tuna reduce. Tunakwambia tu imeisha. Imenini. But because we realize as a business it's not sustainable, we have to be able to live nimble. Sasa ukiniambia tufunge tunafanya, we go. And with that model, we've also been able to open in Mozambique, the company in Mozambique. And this year we're also opening in Zambia, and we actually have finished registering in Tanzania. Because the model, remember, we don't have an office. We can do co-working space. You don't have to do land, na lease. Hakuna story ingine. The protocols of agriculture are the same world over. The issue is the cost. I keep telling people the baking a cake in France and in Kenya is the same thing. Shida maziwa itakuwa different. Pesa ya maziwa, stima na kila kitu, but the fundamentals are the same. Yeah. So we are able to multiply our presence in different jurisdictions, because guys in Malawi are going to eat, guys in Mozambique they're going to eat, Ivory Coast they're going to eat. It's just the fundamentals that are different.
So I'm trying to think like, so your major pivots to sort of going you yourself, listing the land and then doing the, I mean, it's basically you're sort of onboarding the cost because you're already listing the land with your own money and then going ahead and producing the products and selling them yourself.
Yeah, it's basically we went from B2C to B2B, because now we sign contracts with companies. I'm not dealing with individuals because businesses are more resilient than individuals. If a business has a plan to develop whatever, it could be a building or whatever it is, it's going to take quite a bit of shock in the system for them to cut off that program. Because if it's budgeted, we are going. Unless big macroeconomic issues happen, COVID, Nini, all those things, then this project will come to fruition.
So for you think B2B is much better than B2C on your business model? That
On my business model, if I was doing FMCG, then the route to market to go to the final consumer is where the money is at, because that's where you get the money. If you're doing FMCG, you want to figure out how do I get this product to as many people as possible. For me, when I look at it, I don't have to have 100 clients as Tukalime. I can have 10, but they're colossal.
it's like the old saying, better get one client who can give you 1,000 bob than get like 100 clients can give you 10 bob. It's much easier to get one.
Those are 100 clients, simu kila siku. Yeah. And the thing is, the same stress with the guy giving you 10 bob and the guy giving you 100 bob is the same. Same stress. So you'd rather just do the guy for 100 bob.
Pick your poison. Nice. So because I'm also wondering, like in Kenya and basically in Africa, the land issue is very emotive. You get people are very connected to the land. So I'm wondering, did you encounter like people, someone gives you a land, says, hey, and only leave me hapa, and then you get someone come and say, hey, what are you doing here? This is my land.
Oh, we've had situations which is even a current situation right now, where we've leased land and then there's a family dispute. Nomeshalipia. Sasa kuna injunction. Usingie kwa hiyo shamba. And you've paid. And as guys we pay or then we are paying fully. We just give you the cash, you bounce. As guys we do our thing. Now I'm like, trakta zangu lazima ziingie. Kwanza nilime kwanza. Actually somebody told me, if you want to know there's a problem, wacha machines zianze kuingia kwanza. Because guys will call at, hey, Brayo, there's some guys who have ingired your shamba. You'll get to know exactly. So you learn some of these things. But also because you asked me about the lessons in the US and the lessons in Kenya. The lessons in Kenya, trust no one. Trust but verify. Now it's like, give us your title deed, give us your PIN certificate. Even the chief has to vouch for you. We are not playing those games. You can't afford to. And also, as an entrepreneur, where you have a small business, you're trying to grow it to leaps and bounds, you have to guard your reputation with all you got. Because that's all you have. If your reputation, hapa hivi mkiniona hapa kwa business daily, sijui mtu akisema something happened, whatever, that would crush me because that can cripple a business. Yeah, especially your small business. That one goes.
We know a lot of people don't like to engage in agriculture, mostly because the margins are very small, especially from the production point of view. So in your case, what keeps you going? As in, because I'm trying to figure out like how you make your margins. It's very difficult for me to figure out. So can you sort of, without going into the details, but just give us an overview, how does it work?
Contrary, agriculture has the highest margins. Actually, I'll be a little bit crass and saying, the way I look at it, apart from prostitution, drugs, and maybe politics if you're in the African context or the Kenyan context, agriculture is another thing that can give you over 100% ROI. However, it is also there on the flip side, it's also one of the economic activities that can wipe you out. Because kuna locusts. Zimetoka sijui so, you've heard those things, they're coming from Ethiopia, they're coming, zinakula kila kitu. Then you're in problems. So you're asking me how? Let me tell you. Like now, when we're talking about potatoes as a reference point, right? Yes, to produce potatoes is going to be less than, it's going to be less than 20 for sure. And potatoes right now are inching towards 40 bob a kilo. That's a market price. I'm not forming things out there. However, if you're doing potatoes, let's say for example, the most expensive ingredient when growing potatoes is seed. Seed is, if not 50%, over 50% of your production cost. Mbegu za viazi are 60,000 per acre on average. You need 22 bags per acre. Each bag is going for 3K for 1 acre. Now the problem is, the smallholder farmer, 60K is a lot of money. So what they do is, last season, what they harvested is what they sold. Na tule tudogo wanaeka ndio zikuwe mbegu. But the problem of continuously planting what you have harvested is that the attributes keep reducing and reducing and reducing. So you'll find that your crop now becomes susceptible to diseases. So it's carrying the genetic makeup of the last crop. So inaingia na hii ingine inasema, and that's why you find that when you go to a doctor, they ask you, in your family, is there a history of... And that is why even human beings, or even animals, you're told not to interbreed, to be able to get a more resilient offspring. If you interbreed, then those attributes, if you are short in your family and you don't mix with somebody who's tall, inamaanisha nyinyi wote mtakuwa wafupi. So that's the biggest issue, right? So when people cut the corners, and sometimes they're not cutting corners because wanajaribu kuwa janja, is also an economic issue. So if they're doing that, then that's when it looks like they're lower margins. But in actual fact, if you put in all the protocols that you're supposed to put in, the right fertilizer at the right time, the chemicals for fighting pest and disease and stuff, you will get over 100% or over. Of course, there's a divine intervention also, kunyeshe and hizo vitu zote. Yeah. Ask yourself this, the biggest companies in the world, most politicians in Africa are all farmers. Why? If the margins are that low, why are they there?
That's something that I also have a different perspective, because for me, and I think we can go into this, a lot of people ask me about youth getting involved in agriculture, and my perspective is always like, do not go into agriculture as a youth. And in this case, I'm saying like someone who is 18 to 35. And the reason behind it, there's so many things that are against you, right? So there's so many variables. One of them is, of course, land, right? You need capital for you to do that, right? And you need inputs, you need all this machinery for you to be able to do that. No one who is between 18 and 35 has those variables going for them. And let's say even if you had all those variables, there are also other constraints that I think are also going against you. Things like time. For you to produce stuff, let's say it's vegetables, you have to wait 3 months. Maize, you have to wait 4 months. Avocados, you have to wait 3 years. So there's the time constraint. There's also the technology constraint. It's very hard for you to go into the market and find a technology that's going to, let's say, 10x your productivity, right? So as a young person who wants to go to agriculture, my perspective is, at least if you want to go to agriculture, don't go into the production side of things. Maybe input supply, maybe sales, maybe retail, maybe marketing. That's a much better way for you to enter into agriculture if you want to make money. You mentioned about like politicians and people wanting to do agriculture. And my perspective is, agriculture is a labor of love. If you want to go to agriculture to make money, you're going to fail a lot. And the thing with this, my take on this is, a lot of politicians go into agriculture because they have a lot of money. They don't know what to do with it. And to some, by instincts, they actually like agriculture. So those are the two things that are going for them, in my perspective.
Also, the other thing that we forget is, systematically, whether knowingly or unknowingly, We were all told that if you don't go to school, you become a farmer. So most youth don't want to become a farmer. Youth in shags, for them, it's a subsistence farming. So it's not that it's a passion project. It's like you have to grow some maize. Like it's like guys who are farming up country, they sell surplus, but it's mostly for sustenance. It's not. They're not doing it for economic gain. It's the extra one ndio wanauza, and that's why you realize even farmers who are growing beans and stuff wanauzanga ile nini, alafu wanaweka kwa the what are they called, the granary, yeah? And wanatoa wakiuza. Actually hiyo ni akiba. A lot of people don't understand these dynamics, but for them they're also looking for a way out. It's not, and I agree with you in terms of so many things are against you, because here a farmer who's doing potatoes in Kenya, the average yield is about 4 tons, right? Your compatriot in the Netherlands growing potatoes is growing at 20-25 tons an acre. Sababu yeye anafanya machinery, sijui kuna paka you there's almost even a machine massaging the plant ndio isiumie. You get? And on top of that, these guys are being given government subsidies like crazy.
That's a very important variable that a lot of people don't talk about.
Even the US, corn is being grown in Iowa and all this.
You're guaranteed of a specific price.
You're guaranteed. And if you don't get it, the government is going to come and meet that gap. Here, you're by your own. So I can see why the youth would not want to get into agri. But I wouldn't want to discourage them just because you start pole, and then you just keep on adding. You just keep on adding. And if you engage if you get into it with as a group, because it's strength in numbers, you end up being more formidable. And because I feel like for us guys as we're talking before, we're very industrious, we're very innovative and stuff. After farming and getting the produce, using that innovation to value add, that's where the money's at. Because now I remember we're using potatoes as a SI unit. You'll sell potatoes at 40 bob a kilo. When you value add, guess how much the kilo goes for? Take a wild guess.
3x?
Yeah, you'll get to about 140. Yeah. A kilo when you value add. Na hiyo ni kuchonga viazi. Chop it into chips, bag it. Because the restaurants now, because they are doing fast moving, they don't want to peel and fry. They just want to wake that bag and put it in the mafuta, fry it, done. That you can do it in any space, as long as you, of course, sanitary conditions and what have you. You don't need a lot of capital. Now there, it's sweat capital that you need, mostly. But can you imagine, okay, of course you're selling 140 to the big restaurants and stuff like that, yeah? But can you imagine selling it even even if you start local chips, mwitu na nini, and say, madhe usichongezi viazi, mimi ndakuletea, nitaongeza tu 10 bob juu, or whatever it is. Now you become a little bit more industrious, and then your network grows like madness.
Yeah, someone comes and say, okay, niaje leo umemaliza kutengeneza chipo haraka hivyo, msalileta kazi imechongwa. So yeah, that's a way also to...
So it's about being innovative. I know capital is very strenuous. That for everybody, even for us, it's very, very strenuous. But you have to start somewhere, imagine. If you don't start, it's like you're not going to hit the ball unless you swing that bat. You try to kick it. But if you stand there, then the probability is 0.
100%. So if let's say there's a young person listening to this and, they want to go into agriculture, or they have like a 1 acre, they don't know what to do with it, what will you tell them?
First, you have to de-risk. So whatever crop you're growing is either 2 ways. It is fast moving. That means ikikua, you will move it as quick as possible. Number 2, it's not susceptible to... It's less susceptible to the variables that you're trying to avoid, depending on your area, right? So, for example, onions prefer drier area, but they like water, but not too much. But they won't do well in Kitale. So in Kitale, forget about it. Utapata fungal diseases, nani, all those things. So don't do it there. So I'm saying you have to also study about what you're doing. So in your area, what is the right crop? Short term. Me, I do short term crops. Me, I don't know about you guys. Me, I like my money quicker than longer. Utapanda avocado zinaanza kuzaa after 3 years. bro, utakufa njaa in 3 years. Itakuwa struggles. So fast moving, not susceptible to the variables that are in your area. Free in terms of cost of production. What does that look like? But then the biggest other thing, when I look at the different costs, one of the biggest things is labor. Saa zingine manzi ukianza, you have to tarmac. Lazima uingie kwa hiyo shamba. As guys, we call every morning when you have a farm, you do a crop walk, and every evening you do a crop walk. And the crop walk is unatembea, tunaonanga tu hizi ma video watu watembea kwa shamba. It's because you're looking for like pests. You look at disease onset. Jioni ukienda kulala, you know how your crop is. Ndio kesho asubuhi isikwe surprise. So I'll tell them the thing is, look, if you really want to get into it, like you said, it's a labor of love, but it's doable. It's so doable. By the way, you'll be so shocked. Lakini pia, manzi jisaidie ndio usaidike. Make sure you have to start somewhere, but also the market part. Remember, for us guys, the 4 tenets us guys live by. Are we producing at the right price? Because we have to be competitive. If I'm selling something to Bidco or I'm selling something to whatever, the first thing nitaulizwa ni bei. The second thing nitaulizwa, quality, let a sample tuone. Si ndio? Hata watu wa kushona nguo na nini, wanauliza ngo bei na sample. Sema okay, sawa. Sisi tunataka kununua tani 6. Utaweza quantity. Na tunanunua hizo tani 6 consistently every week. Utaweza. Those 4 things. If those 4 things can drive you, then you're good to go. And also, I know there's fake it to make it, because I have faked it to make it in a lot of things. But manzi usichome. So unaweza ambiwa, because that has happened to me, where you're told we need a canter of potatoes every week. I'm like, sour. And then you realize, by the way, and deep down, you're not going to, at some point, shamba yako itaisha, sindio? You won't have enough. So you're like, okay, but I'll buy from Marikiti and stuff. Sour. That's with the assumption that the Marikiti price will remain constant. And do you have enough float to be able to be buying from Marikiti every week, waiting for that check to pay? So you have to...
Yeah, you have to do your math, for sure. Earlier you talked about mentality, because I'm assuming you are into like large-scale production, because maybe you saw it in the US. Where were you staying in the US?
I was staying in Kansas.
Is it an agricultural state?
Kabisa. It's the Midwest.
Yeah. So I think sometimes you have to see it in order to actually do it. So most of our farmers are small scale. I think 80% of the food we eat comes from small scale farmers. So what is the role then of small scale farmers? Because for you, I think you are more into large scale. You think that working large scale is much better than small scale.
And to be honest, remember when I was in the States, farming was not part of the idea. The large scale part has come in by doing the mathematics. When you're like, it makes sense. Because even for us in the beginning, before we pivoted, saying 3 acres and above, we already knew at some point it's not profitable if I add other things in here, because at some point if you're doing an acre and below, you almost have to be the labor. You have to need to reduce the costs to make it work. If you want consistency, you have to employ machinery and mechanization. And machinery and mechanization only happens at a certain scale. We're talking about machines that can do 50 acres a day in terms of plowing or harrowing or harvesting or whatever it has. So the small scale farmer, it's usually a very, unpopular opinion. Commercially, it doesn't work. But in society, we need it. Because that's where now at least, what wanakula from small scale farming. It's not from the big farms. They're eating from the small scale farmers. All these cabbage that you see coming in, the warus, the carrots and stuff, majority are from small scale farmers, not the big farmers. However, for the small scale farmer to graduate from half an acre, an eighth, a quarter, to graduate to 10, 30, 40, 50 acres, they have to amalgamate. Otherwise, they will never graduate. Just because there's not enough capital to be generated from half an acre. It's just ukweli wa mambo. No, you see, the thing is, I have a lot of friends in the agricultural space, and we talk about this, that small-scale farming is not working. However, there are people who are raising copious amounts of funding saying wanasaidia wakulima wadogo. Me sitting back, and maybe I have a right to say this, a right because I'm Kenyan, because I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about Uganda, Tanzania. I'm talking about here. I'm Kenyan, and I'm also in agri. Mkulima mdogo, show us a success story where this farmer has gone from half an acre to a quarter an acre to 10, 20. What's a success story? Are you raising money to say that you're helping them, but you're helping them in perpetuity? That hawataitoka kwa hizo macratches. When I get. So where I'm saying it's unpopular because somebody's saying no, but they have to be helped. I'm like, yes, I understand, and we thank you for that. The problem is, this farmer, you came in, you did a prospectus and proposal, you sent it out to somebody in New York, to me at $2-3 million. Has this person moved from X to X? The same thing we talk about agri-tech. You're going to sell somebody agri-tech who can't afford data, can't afford fertilizer. So what are we doing? Which one are we putting before the other? And they're saying, why I'm saying I have a right to talk about it because I'm seeing the way guys are being nyanyaswad, being said that we are here helping smallholder farmers. I'm like, no. So in reverse, what am I doing for the smallholder farmers is having an open door policy in terms of the farms that we have. Hakuna ati nani amekwambia ukanyage kwa hii shamba nini? Come, learn. Number 2, if I'm buying fertilizer and you're my neighbor, whatever size you have, tununue pamoja, I can probably muscle a cheaper rate for you to be able to get that. My agronomists are there. I'm not going to charge you for my agronomist to tell you. They say when your neighbor's house is on fire, you need to watch out for yours also because the fire is coming. I'm not going to charge somebody for my agronomist to tell those guys that, we're getting this fertilizer because when we did soil analysis on our farm, we found out it's acidic or whatever it is. Number 3, market. If you're growing the same thing I'm growing, when the lorries are coming to pick, I'll pick from yours. But then that is a more practical way of helping that farmer graduate from XXXX.
Yeah, definitely. I see that. And also, I think part of my solution is because I come from Kisii and we know land is very small. Let's just say that. There's a lot of people and the land is small. If you get people like with 1 acre, but they're like 4 or 5 children who everybody needs a land and that land must be, yes. Yeah, that land is going to be subdivided for sure. So everybody needs their land, their piece of land. So when you talk about like amalgamation, sort of bringing those pieces of land together, that's not going to happen.
No, I mean, yeah, but the thing is, the politics of the world or the politics of today, they have to talk about it because that's the only way that these guys are going to shikana. Otherwise,
for sure. And my response to that is usually, can we find a way to put these guys together, sort of a cooperative? So let's say hundreds of these farmers are actually growing maybe maize, and half of it they're using it like for consumption. Can half of it put it together in a cooperative and they can go and sell it? That's more of a practical way to actually helping small scale farmers rather than everybody going on their way.
Exactly, and the cooperatives are there. The unfortunate thing, which I think is a systemic thing as a country, is ukuju. They have leaders, so the politics there becomes also a problem now. It's those things that they become, when you think about them, it's actually very sad when you think about it, because these farmers, we've been talking about maize prices, sugar prices, all these things since God knows when. These factories keep getting built out, but where are they being built out? Not that I'm saying they shouldn't be, but ile shimo ambayo hizi pesa zinatoka inaenda wapi? It's a very tough thing to me. But you know what? We are the change that we want to be. We can sit and talk about all these things through and through, or lack of a better word, we can bitch about it all the time. However, we can't lose hope because there's a generational change that's happening. And I just hope we don't take the bad manners of former years into the future.
Nice. Let's talk a bit about something that is usually in the air a lot of time nowadays, and that's about sustainability from an agricultural perspective. So there's a lot of talk about sustainable farming, regenerative agroecology. You manage huge pieces of land, and some of the people who I talk to, they usually say sustainable farming is not efficient enough. What is your take?
It depends. Some of it is, some of it is not. There's some simple things that you can do that make it a little bit more sustainable. Number one, do your soil analysis. Usiweke tu fertilizer sababu umesikia NPK ndio unaekanga at this point. You may not need it, or you may need something different. When you're doing land preparation, you try not to disturb the soil as much as possible. So there are other ways of doing that. That makes sure that the soil is keeping its nutrients in as much as possible. When you harvest, are you plowing back in? If it's the let's say if it's maize, the stalks, are you plowing them back in to make sure that your organic matter in the soil increases? So there's small things that, if someone says it's not efficient, maybe they're overthinking it. You get what I'm saying? It's the small things. Don't overuse fertilizer. Recycle as much as you can. Put back into the soil. And again, if you're in a position of privilege, rotate your land. We'll see, ponder the same place over and over and over again. You'll degrade it, you know? So there's small things that you can do to play your part to make sure that you're sustainable. Yeah. Plant trees around your farm. You know, small things that don't even... Sometimes I think people overthink just because it sounds sustainable agriculture. Now, the other thing is organic. Because organic, what you're saying is, it's like giving your kids, not giving them immunizations, right? And saying, no, these things, that's why there's cancer and all these things. Yes, you can trace all these things. But then now what happens is, then your kid becomes susceptible to the different diseases that these things are supposed to cure. In organic agriculture, you're trying to use organic methods of growing this stuff, right? But what happens is, more often than not, the yield drops for organic, right? It's food safe, yeah, or human safe, but the yield will drop and stuff. So you have to angalia. From a commercial point, especially in Kenya or in Africa in general, the sad thing is we're not paying a premium for organic foodstuffs. Nikienda kwa soko, mi naangalianga bei, unfortunately. So there's going to be so much education that's needed to be able to push the organic conversation. Because otherwise, suddenly it becomes tough. Because we are very price sensitive as a country. You walk into places, you see things, and you're like, how much is this compared to how much is this? Maybe the question I should be asking is, why the price difference? Versus places in Europe and in the US where organic, you're paying top dollar or top, for that. Then it's pushing the conversation. Yeah. Actually, I think, and I don't want to say it's not a fact, but I think the natives or the residents in Europe and in the US actually shy away from things that are not organic. They ask like kitu, mimi siwezi ingest.
Yeah, and that's also another perspective to have, because myself, I'm a huge believer in organic farming myself, and the thesis behind it is very simple. What is the alternative? And when you look at the alternative, it doesn't sound so great. That's why I look at it from soil health perspective. And this is something a lot of people tend to confuse a lot. When you talk about organic, you mean there's no fertilizers at all, but that's not true, right? Fertility is very important. Of course, organic farmers fertilize their land. They use organic fertilizers, right? It comes to pest control. We are not like leisure free, like pests. You come to our farm and eat everything, right? We know we use some ways to control pests. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had more. And the best way we can do that is having this kind of conversation, like, hey, what's organic doing? What's conventional doing? And by that, I think we can be able to raise more awareness on that topic as well. So having talked about that, what then do you see is the future of an African farmer? Do you see them having like drones in their farm? Their data is being sent to their phones. They're saying, hey, your N level is going down. What do you see as the future of an African farmer?
In terms of the status of the African farmer, I think the future is very bright. Just because as all these guys are developing, as guys are also pushing for development, for highways and stuff. But as Europe and the US are doing their things, Africa will be the food basket of the world. That's what I believe. Just because we have the land and we also have a growing population in terms of youth and stuff like that. So we are able to produce as much as possible. You have people in the Middle East also looking at Africa in terms of supplying ABCD for them. China doing ABCD, producing. So it's bright. The other thing, as because of having such a youthful populace, the advancement of tech is going to be in leaps and bounds. Just because we know very well we don't want to grow it in the traditional way of doing these things. So you're going to have situations where automation at the farm level will be the thing. I feel like we're at the cusp of a technological boom, just because for us we are always looking for a way to solve different things, right? Especially in Kenya. Like I was in Senegal 2 weeks ago, and first of all, there mobile money is not a big thing. It's there, but it's not a big thing. Even swiping in most places, even restaurants, they're just saying cash only. It's an interesting thing that's going on. But then me putting on my entrepreneurial hat, I'm just like, but then by the way, West Africa, because they're in mining and extractives, they import a lot of their food. Why can't we create a West African hub for them to be able, instead of importing, because now you're also helping them with Forex, instead of importing and sending all that stuff. And then you see also there's that big change that's happening in West Africa, where they're moving away from the colonial big brother. So it's a very big thing. But you know what? I think that's where the future is. And I think we are in for an interesting ride.
Yeah, you mentioned about technology playing a key part. Of course, right now, you've said before that some of the technology that has been employed so far is not up to standard in terms of like giving farmers apps and stuff. So for you, what is the right technology? What have you seen in terms of technology that has been brought into the market? And like, you know what, I think that's a really good.
I think the first thing is you have to start from the beginning, which is soil analysis. Soil analysis and being able to do what's your net arable area. Remember, for us guys, when we started, even now, we measure our land. We are able to tell the plant population. What is this plant population for these crops? Before we used to take things to the lab. Nowadays, you can test it with instant results at the farm level. You can put a microbe and it tells you hapa acidity, hapa iko ishida. You see, when you start from there, then now you're starting from a proper foundation, which catapults you or sets the journey to getting to that objective to be a bit more certain. Because from there, if we're talking about net arable area, so I know this farmer has 2 acres. So in 2 acres, we know the plant population can be 50,000 crops, for example, with a yield of X per whatever. So you know how much fertilizer they need to put per acre. The second thing, I honestly think, and a lot of it has been spoken in the political space, and they were talking about subsidizing production than consumption. It's the right way to do. Because if we can't feed ourselves as a country, that's a problem. That's actually a national security risk, to be honest. So the second thing that needs to be done, once we've done the tech for measuring the soil in terms of the nutrients, now subsidize that cost of production, the fertilizers. Then all these other apps come after. They can't come before. Because if you don't have your soil analysis right, if you don't have you even mapped your land right, fine, you can have microbes to test how much rain you're getting, but you've already started from a point of failing. So what is the rain coming to help? You can't say that you're going to get 10 tons off this acre. Now already your plant population is for 4 tons. Then you act surprised at the end of the season. You're like, hala, sijui mbona sikupata ile mazao nilikuwa natarajia. It's a problem.
You mentioned about subsidies. So I'm trying to figure out like what is the right way? Because what you're saying when you talk about subsidies is this farmer or this producer cannot be able to produce their products without a helping hand. So in some way or shape or form, you're saying they're not productive now, or they don't know what they're doing basically, because they're not able to produce a product and bring it into the market that people can be able to buy.
They are, but they're not living up, or they're not fulfilling the potential.
Is it better to subsidize? Because we talked about like the EU and the US mostly subsidizing, like, is it market?
No. Kenya is a net importer of food. So we already import a lot. subsidize production, the yields would go up, right? Instead of us getting tomatoes, potatoes from Tanzania, then we're able to satisfy our market.
So that's assuming we actually give them good inputs. Like, yeah, the other day I was talking about Alan Namu covered the fake fertilizer story. Yeah, so it's like, hey, we are subsidizing inputs production, but you're giving us really bad input. So what's going on here?
That's very true. Mi nakwambia, this nini. You know, I remember the politician who had said, I think the issue was what? Was it sugar or oil? There was a problem, cooking oil or something. And he said in Kenya there are multiple ways of dying.
Yeah. It was a GMO issue.
Yes, a GMO issue. Which, by the way, that was just a very weird way of looking at things. Like, no, you just want to add another one for us to die. You can't look at it that way. But, Aki, I'm telling you sometimes, that's why I say Kenya, if I was to speak about my country, that's part for resilience. I know it sounds corny because people talk about it all the time. But, Aki, na zingine, tunaishi. Where we are as a country versus all the things that hit us, all the headwinds that hit us, but then tuko mbele mbaya. Because otherwise, I think we'd have given up a long time ago. You nowadays, you buy sugar, you don't know. Kesho, utasikia a headline, someone telling you, hearing at substandard sugar was imported. You're like, what the hell? That time you are just staring. You just leave.
Yeah, sometimes I actually also think about this. You can imagine we are the best East African country. What do other Eastern African countries then look like?
Us guys, we are wading through water, but we are kicking faster than we should, just to stay afloat. But us guys we are there, uko chini tuko. Uko juu tunakaa tuko sawa, you'll see guys having drinks, coffee, nini. But uko chini guys do you know, a lot of entrepreneurs don't know if they're going to make payroll. Like you kimwangalia, life ni sawa. Life niko sawa. But you don't know if they're going to make payroll. But the belief of like, it's okay, it will work out, you know? And I was saying earlier before we went live, you know, someone was asking me, like I said, I was telling guys, I have a podcast I have to do tomorrow. Because I've done a couple of podcasts. And I was telling you about how you have to evangelize both internally into the company, for your staff, colleagues, kila mtu, and outside. By the way, and I keep telling guys, entrepreneurs, talk about what you're doing. Usisikie haya. You somebody laugh at you, siku hizi unajisikia uko. By the way, it's okay.
If you don't talk about it, then who is...
You know, I mean, I remember one of our biggest contracts, I got a call from Italy. And somebody was just like, by the way, we are starting this project. Somebody told us to call you. And it was almost like, ni kama put your blank check in terms of, you're the guy for the job. But just because you've been consistent, trying to update people what's happening, what you're doing, and stuff like that, they're able to see. And by the time even you go for those meetings, because people watch this podcast, people watch what you're doing online, it's almost like you've done the interview already 90%. Now it's for you to show up later and do other nonsensical things to lose to lose the contract. Yeah,
it's interesting. We were talking about like our neighboring countries because you have sort of expanded to these countries. You're looking to Mozambique, Zambia, you said, Uganda. What is it like in terms of going to new territories? What is the intricacies of, venturing into these new countries?
Do you know, you find that the African problem is the same across the board. In terms of, we have a youthful population. We have a population that doesn't have a lot of jobs. We have a population that most often than not is also disillusioned by the leadership because we aspire for more. I'm not saying, so nobody should say the politics of the day. I don't care who you vote for. It's up to you. You just vote with your conscience. But I'm just saying, but we want more because we know we can get more. Having said that, whenever I go to all these different countries, I always feel the warmth. I've never gone to a place and felt unwelcome. Just because you're carrying the same burdens as your colleague in Mozambique, in Angola, yeah. You're a young professional trying to make it out here. Yeye kuna shida zake huko, gava yake inamfanyia ABCD, wewe unafanywa hivi hapa hivi ABCD. It's the same issue. So with that, there's a camaraderie that kicks in very easily. That's that part. Now the other part of the system, the system checking you, let's say checking you, it's going to happen. But let's say, like, for example, Mozambique, when I first decided to go to Mozambique, the first thing I did, again, I'm going to say this is from a point of privilege in terms of I made a few phone calls to guys and I got the phone number for the Kenyan ambassador to Mozambique. But the Kenyans are very patriotic. Tuko nje, tunasaidiana sana. See, you know how it is. Yeah, tunasaidiana sana. So I told her, hi, ambassador is called Ambassador Madiora. I'm like, hey, how are you? I've been given your number by so and so. Just a cold call. He didn't even know who I'm calling. Who is this? And he was in Maputo. I want to come and open my business in Maputo, in Mozambique. And he's just like, he gave me, we talked about the system and the issues and all that stuff, and the opportunities and all that stuff. Then when I went to Mozambique, he welcomed me to his office. We had a very long conversation, and that kind of made me aware of what I am trading into. Usiende huko tu fua. So the intricacies are there. That's why I'm saying the African problem is the same. The system will check you. There is unofficial taxes that you will pay going in. But then if you can make it anywhere, I think Kenya, you can make it anywhere. And also, one of the other things that drove me to have that grit of going to all these countries, I told you about my mom used to sell clothes. And I remember my mom, I think, maybe she got into class 8. I don't think she went to high school because she was a teenage mom. And I remember she was going to these countries, the Turkey, the Hong Kongs and stuff like that, na pesa ya chama, uneducated, without the internet, without the phone calls of who to call, ambassador, so and so, so and so. As a group of ladies, they would go, buy clothes and establish relationships, bring them here and sell. So me, in 2025, what am I afraid of? Where I can Google where to stay, Airbnb, with reviews of what I can get an eSIM, and I land, it's already active. I just pay for it. I can, which restaurant I want to go, who I need to see, co-working space with computer, kila kitu. Again, what are you afraid of? Those guys, those ladies, and there are a lot of those ladies who we have to give a lot of heshima to. They're the ones who made these exhibitions that you see in town and all that stuff. That thing started from those ladies in the early 90s, mid 90s, because they opened up. They showed. I was talking to my sister the other day. They used to have traveler's checks. Most people, even who are going to listen to this, like, we have traveler's checks. A traveler's check used to be a check that the bank gives you. It's almost like you pay for them to give you, and it's honored on the other side. So they give you for $100. You used to have to call your bank manager to approve you to get dollars. You couldn't just go buy. You get what I'm saying? So again, and this is also a challenge to those guys out there, we have the right recipe to succeed in a lot of things. Yes, we are not all starting on the same footing, that's appreciated, but don't be afraid, because if you want to go study the market in Uganda, even kama watu hawezi afford ndege, panda basi. I went to school in Kampala. We're not flying. The buses are defunct, but it used to be a Kamba bus. We used to panda in Tao. It used to drive all night from Usiku. I think we used to get to Kampala the next day, maybe at 10, 11 a.m. from like 7 p.m. here. And we went to school, and now imagine now it's very fast. And you go learn, and there's a compatriot on the other side willing to show you the ropes.
So I think we've talked a lot about some of your impact that you've had and some of the things you've done so far. So looking forward, what is then your motivation?
I mean, for me, I am, sometimes I think I'm unconventional, just because I don't want to do this forever. I've seen also people's parents and people in positions of leadership not want to get out of the way. I want to actually do it maybe another 10 years, maybe even not that long, where I will get somebody else to run, to push Tukalime to the other limit. I want to do other things, to be honest. I want to teach. I want to mentor. Maybe not start another business, because maybe, the road has been tough. But there are other things I want to do that are passionate. And I think your ideas are, they can stagnate if you're not careful. So give somebody else the mantle to be able to push it forward. But for Tukalime, we want to be the biggest agricultural company in sub-Saharan Africa without owning an acre, but be able to create wealth through agriculture, an acre at a time. That's what we want to do. We want to mentor the next generation of entrepreneurs. You don't want to gatekeep. You want to be able to tell somebody, this is the way. This is, tell people, your RM should be your best friend. Huyo jamaa atakusaidia. When umepatia check na iko karibu kubounce, huyo jamaa ndio anakusaidia. You know, how to make sure you guard your reputation with everything that you have. Just be a nice person. You know, this nicety, you know, people say that nice people finish last, but it goes a long way. People call you, just be like, hey, by the way, I was at this conference in Munich and I gave somebody your number. Ebu pige jama. Nobody's asking you atina. You're dealing kingiana, they party 5%. They're just like, it's okay, you just continue. Just be a nice person, be innovative, work hard. Things zo work.
For sure, they always tend to work. You just need to start and have that great sort of like a vision of, hey, this is where I want to go. It's gonna be hard, but
and also the hard phone calls. You like yesterday. I remember there's some contractors were supposed to pay Jana, then we were not able to pay them yesterday, and I just pick up the phone call. By the way, you have to be a man or a woman about it. Just be like, boss, I know you're expecting X chums. It won't come. They'll be disappointed. But it's better to tell them than for them to make plans thinking that it's still coming and then you're disappointed. Tell them up when you know it's not happening. Yes, you'll feel it's a difficult phone call to make, by the way, but make those phone calls. Or even stakeholders, things have gone wrong. Make that phone call. They appreciate that because you're more dependable.
Yeah. Okay. I usually have a segment. I call it the rapid fire questions. So what I've done, I've prepared 10 questions for you. So the idea behind it is very simple. You sort of give a quick answer to the questions, and hopefully guys will get to know you a little bit better. Ready?
Let's go.
So the first question is, as a kid, what did you say you wanted to be when you grew up?
Sheesh. You know what? I remember telling my dad I wanted to be a scientist. I didn't know what a scientist was. Maybe because I was watching cartoons that had scientists. Dexter's Lab or something. I can't remember what it was. But yeah.
The second question, if you had to eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what will it be?
Chapo, for sure. For sure. Chapo na chai, chapo na anything.
Okay, the third question, who is your favorite historical figure?
It's yo-yos. Like I found I like autobiographies, but historical figure. Okay, let me say this. And it's... let me give that crop of the African leaders post-independence. Good or bad, depending on how you look at it. But the Samora Machels, the Nyereres of this world and stuff, I can't pick one because they all have also their imperfections. But I like that they ushered in the next generation.
They stood up for something, actually. So, I mean, the thing with nowadays, we're looking at in retrospective. You know, they were doing what they knew then, given the knowledge that they had.
That's what I'm saying. You can't, because if you choose Mandela, someone will tell you Mandela had domestic abuse and in his, you're like, ah. So you have to, yeah.
Yeah, let it go. So the fourth question is, what's one habit or mindset shift that changed your life?
I would say being more optimistic than pessimistic. Because with that, you get to see opportunity instead of downfall. Yeah, you're able to walk into a room, have conversations with anybody and be able to see how we can work together instead of how we cannot work together.
Fifth question, where is one place you like to go that you haven't been?
I've been telling people my foreign policy right now is Africa first. And maybe it's because I'm salty because I was supposed to get a Schengen visa last year, then they denied me, saying that I do not have enough ties to Kenya. Even after I showed them bank statements, CR12, my grandmother's birth certificate and everybody, they said, yeah. So I said, Africa first. So I've done Egypt, I've done Senegal, all these other countries I've done. But I really want to do Morocco and Namibia is on my list.
Yeah, I've had a few people mention Namibia. I don't know. They say they have like really good, is it waves?
It's where the sand dunes meet the ocean.
Ah, okay. Sixth question, what's your favorite book?
Favorite book? To be honest, I'm not a big reader. I read more articles like crazy. Like there's a guy who writes on Business Daily called Ashioya or Bikozulu. I love listening to people's stories more than reading books.
Seventh question, what's one underrated crop you'll bet your entire future on?
One underrated crop, beans. Beans, everybody eats beans. State House, Umo, Westi, Lavi, name it, beans.
Eighth question, you've got 30 seconds to pitch farming to a Gen Z. What do you say?
I think you should get into farming because, first of all, you're your own boss. When you start with the farming part, you do the first protocols of getting the land ready, putting the seed in, and you get to a point where you're 2 months in, most of your days are pretty empty because you've done all the work in the first half of the night. Just think about it as Manu leading 3-0 first leg. The second leg doesn't become that hard because you're pretty much done all the work in the first leg. Number 2, you get to spend your days outside and enjoying nature. Number 3, margins are great. Number 4, for the guys, when you post that you're going around to the farms, the babes like people who go around out to the farms. Wanakuambia manze twende road trip. But to be honest, agriculture is rewarding just because you get to meet so many people who are also have the same dreams and ideas that you have. So get into it.
Yeah, the nature thing is really underrated because nowadays I see people selling like walking barefoot. Like that's a thing. And when I see guys on the farm, they're literally like, I walk on the farm with my barefoot. I'm like, should I start charging for this?
No, the nature thing is so interesting because you just sit there. Like I remember, I had 2 office parties. One at the farm in Narok and one at the farm. We have an office here in Westlands. And the one in Narok, tuliambia to the guys, so we bought mbuzis from our neighbors. Tulichinja. There was no tent and sijui a lot of things. Chinja mbuzi hapo. There's a way they make a fire pit real quick. And I was just like, by the way, this is life.
Yeah. So the 9th question is, what quote resonates with you most?
What quote resonates with me most? I would say it's a very corny one. Make hay where the sun shines, man. You know why? After COVID, when I realized, by the way, when you're on a wave and you're on a winning streak, because it's not, life is like this. Enda, run with it. Sign those contracts. Do whatever, work over. Because it will stop. It will drop. And when it stops, when the music stops, you better have made whatever you wanted to do. Yeah.
Nice. So the last question, knowing what you know now, what advice could you give to your 18-year-old self?
I would say, watch the company you keep. Don't be driven by what people think. Make sure the integrity part is that's your North Star in terms of guidance. Yeah. Because you think about some of the lies that you told your parents and stuff, and like that was not necessary. That was not necessary for sure. Because right now, at 40, I actually prefer staying home at more. I hang out with the same friends. Like 5, actually I counted, by the way. The other day I was thinking, if I needed something, let's say Harambe, God forbid, I don't have that many people, but I'm confident in calling the same 5, 6 people I know. Actually, my family is more, we are more friends now. My sister, my cousins, we are tighter. Just because I don't want to make new friends. People have problems. So basically, yeah, just don't care about what people think. Be comfortable in your own skin. If you want to stay home on a Friday night, stay home on a Friday night. Who cares?
That's a good perspective to have. So yeah, those are 10 questions. Thank you very much for making time for the pod. If guys want to follow you, especially on social media, how they get in touch?
I would say for Tukalime, it's Tukalime on Facebook, IG, it's at Tukalime. For me, on IG, it's Kevin Kamau. If it's for Jobo, you find I'm more on LinkedIn. But I'm a very easy guy, really. There's not a lot of complication. If there's time and stuff and want to do coffee and just talk about agri, always willing to talk to guys. Because I feel, the way they say iron sharpens iron, I don't know it all. So the reason why I like human stories and listening to other people is because you get to learn something different every day.
All right. Thank you very much. I think you've been very open in terms of sharing your ups and downs and some of the experiences that you've done so far. So I really appreciate that. I'm sure guys are going to love this podcast. So till the next one, remember to be organic. Cheers.